Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine getting a shortcut to understanding a vibrant new culture and some seriously game-changing tips for mastering a new language, all pulled directly from one incredible conversation. That's precisely what we're embarking on today here on The Deep Dive.
Indeed. Our core focus for this detailed exploration is the dynamic culture of the Bahamas and some truly invaluable practical advice for anyone on their English learning journey. And we're approaching this through a truly unique lens, an exclusive in-depth interview with Adalgisa Hillhouse.
Right. And the source material isn't just some dry report, is it?
No, not at all. It's from an English interview project where students actually had a real interactive conversation with Adalgisa, diving deep into her experiences in her adopted country, its unique culture, and her personal insights.
And what an illuminating conversation it was. Our mission, as always, is to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge and, well, surprising insights from this rich intercultural exchange. This isn't just about relaying facts. It's about providing you, our listener, with a deeper, more personal connection to a new culture, and hopefully equipping you with some powerful strategies to level up your English skills in the process. Think of it as your express lane to being well-informed, with plenty of aha moments along the way.
And what's truly fascinating from the outset is Adalgisa Hillhouse's unique background. I mean, this really sets the stage. She was born and grew up in the Dominican Republic, a vibrant Hispanic nation, but later made the significant move to the Bahamas.
So she has this dual perspective.
Precisely. This journey gives her an incredibly rare and compelling dual perspective on both cultures. It allows her to draw parallels and highlight contrasts that someone from a single background simply couldn't, offering insights that are both nuanced and deeply personal. It perfectly sets the stage for the comparisons we're about to explore.
That foundation, her personal story, is actually the ideal starting point for us, isn't it? Understanding her journey truly unlocks the layers of insight we're about to explore. So Adalgisa grew up and completed all her studies, including university in San Pedro, Dominican Republic.
Right.
Then she was in her mid-20s when she made this truly significant move to the Bahamas. And this wasn't just, a simple change of address or career relocation. She described it as a complete start over.
Yeah, can you imagine?
I mean, leaving everything familiar to effectively rebuild your life and career in a completely different cultural and linguistic environment, that takes guts.
It truly represented a profound transformation for her. You see, Adalgisa's professional background in the Dominican Republic was well established, rooted in publishing arts and advertising. She had built a career.
Okay, so she wasn't just starting out.
Not at all. But moving to the Bahamas, an English-speaking nation, meant she had to genuinely learn English, not just, brush up on what she might have picked up in a classroom back home.
Okay, so it wasn't just about knowing some English.
No, she mentioned having an idea of English, maybe a theoretical understanding from her studies. But the actual everyday speaking, comprehending, navigating life in English, that was a different beast entirely.
Right, the practical application.
Exactly. And this intensely personal experience of language acquisition is precisely what makes her advice later on so incredibly valuable and relatable. It's not just theory, it's lived experience.
That's a powerful distinction. Genuinely learn versus just studying. What do you think was the biggest shock for her in that real-world language immersion compared to what she thought she knew? Was it specific vocabulary, the speed of conversation, or something else? Because it really highlights a common challenge for many learners, doesn't it?
Well, based on what she shared, it seems like it was the sheer practicality of it all. Like you said, I mean, knowing grammar rules from a textbook is one thing, right? But applying them fluidly in a fast-paced conversation at, say, the grocery store, or understanding local idioms and slang, that's a whole different ballgame. She kind of hints at the frustration of not being able to express herself fully, which I think is a universal hurdle for language learners. It's about making that shift from just decoding words to actually thinking in the new language. And this immersion, like you hinted, becomes a massive theme for her later advice.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's demystify the Bahamas itself a bit. We hear the name, but where exactly is it situated and what makes it distinct?
Right. Adalgisa clarifies that while the Bahamas is geographically close to the Caribbean, she mentioned, you can almost see Cuba from parts of it, which is pretty cool. It's not entirely considered part of the Caribbean in the same way the Dominican Republic is, at least culturally.
Okay, so there's a distinction there.
Yeah, a key one. Instead, it's officially classified as English-speaking Caribbean, which immediately sets it apart from its Spanish and French-speaking neighbors. The main island is New Providence, And its bustling capital, Nassau, is where Adalgisa resides. That's really the heart of the nation's activity.
That distinction is crucial for understanding its unique identity, I guess.
Definitely. And when you look at the climate, Adalgisa noted it's very similar to the Dominican Republic, that vibrant tropical climate we often associate with the region.
Makes sense, given the geography.
But she pointed out a subtle but interesting difference. The Bahamas is apparently less humid. Now, for someone living there daily or even just visiting, that less oppressive humidity can make a significant difference in comfort and how you experience the tropical warmth.
Oh, I bet. Humidity can be a killer.
Totally. And of course, a big one for many, no snow. Ever. Which, let's be honest, is a significant benefit for a lot of people. Imagine swapping those blustery winter mornings for year-round sunshine and gentle breezes. It truly shapes the outdoor lifestyle, the kinds of activities available.
And your wardrobe.
Exactly. Think about it, light fabrics year-round, never needing heavy coats or snow boots. This isn't just about weather, it's about a fundamental difference in the daily rhythm and how people interact with their environment.
No snow is definitely a universal appeal, especially for those of us enduring harsh winters. And speaking of contrasts, the English colonization of the Bahamas is the direct reason for English being its official language.
Right, that's the historical root.
This historical legacy creates a really clear cultural and linguistic contrast with the Hispanic culture of the Dominican Republic, which, as we know, is primarily Spanish-speaking, with its own rich Latin influences. It's not just about what language they speak, but why they speak it, tracing back to centuries of colonial history that shaped their identity in completely different ways.
Indeed. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty of the Bahamian economy and the cost of living, because this is where we uncover a surprising and, well, often challenging reality.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
The Bahamian economy is overwhelmingly driven by tourism. And interestingly, this sector actually started quite early, way back in the early 1900s. It was turning the islands into a destination for the wealthy even before mass tourism really became a thing.
Wow, early adopters.
Kind of, yeah. And following tourism, finance plays a significant role. The Bahamas established itself as an international financial center. But it's important to understand the scale here. The Bahamas has a very small population, less than 500,000 people spread across multiple inhabited islands.
That's tiny compared to many countries.
It is. And this predominantly service-based industry means they don't have much manufacturing or industrial output or large-scale agriculture. This inherently limits internal production, you see.
Okay, so they're heavily reliant on tourism and finance. Now, here's a point Adalgisa shared that might genuinely surprise many listeners, perhaps even be a bit shocking. What did she reveal about the cost of living there?
Okay, get ready for this. She explicitly stated that the Bahamas has one of the most expensive costs of living in the world.
Wow, seriously. In the world?
Yes. She even made the staggering comparison to Switzerland, suggesting that when she combines the average daily costs, the Bahamas can sometimes feel even more expensive than a global financial hub known for its super high prices.
That is actually shocking. Why? What drives that?
It's primarily because they have to import basically everything. Imagine living on an island nation where nearly all your food, your consumer goods, even basic construction materials have to be shipped in from elsewhere, mostly the U.S.
Right, the logistics alone must be costly.
Exactly. That heavy reliance on imports drives prices sky high, creating a unique kind of economic pressure for its citizens that you might not expect in a, beautiful tropical paradise.
That reliance on imports clearly has a massive ripple effect on daily costs.
Yeah.
But what does it mean for something as fundamental as, say, what's on the breakfast table? Let's zoom in from the macro economy to the micro level of daily meals, because this is where cultural differences really come to life, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. So in the Bahamas, cultural breakfast staples she mentioned are often grits and tuna, or grits and eggs. Sounds simple, maybe, but it tells a story.
Grits. Okay, for listeners who might not know, what exactly are grits?
Good question. Adalgisa explained it's a type of corn, specifically corn that's been dried, ground up, kind of like a coarse flour or maybe Italian polenta, and then you cook it like a hot cereal, almost like a savory porridge. It's typically served savory, not sweet, often with various meats like canned corned beef or tuna or sausages or eggs alongside it.
Okay, got it. Savory corn porridge. How does that compare to a typical Dominican breakfast?
Well, it stands in stark contrast. Adalgisa really emphasized the freshness of food in the Dominican Republic. She mentioned that in the DR, you can easily go to a local market, a colmado perhaps, and get incredibly fresh produce and ingredients readily available. Whereas in the Bahamas, because so much is imported and often travels long distances, the food is frequently preserved, canned, or just generally not as farm fresh. This changes the whole cooking and eating experience.
That makes so much sense given the import reliance we just discussed. It also probably explains why you'll find a lot of familiar U.S. franchises like Wendy's and McDonald's serving breakfast in the Bahamas.
Exactly. Those offer easy, convenient options, providing a taste of the familiar amidst the unique local cuisine, especially given the high cost of imported fresh goods.
And Adalgisa herself, coming from the Dominican Republic, clearly still holds a deep affinity for Dominican food, right?
Oh, definitely. She reminisced about mofongo from the early 90s, a classic Dominican dish involving mashed plantains with garlic and pork cracklings. Sounds delicious, actually.
It does.
And she humorously mentioned her cocoa upbringing, likely referring to coconut with dumpling food, noting the generous flour content. It was a fun little nod to those hearty traditional meals she grew up with.
It's a nice peek into her personal tastes and how food connects us to our roots, even when we move somewhere completely different.
Absolutely. And this contrast in food culture really highlights the broader differences in their daily rhythms and pace of life.
How so?
Well, Adalgisa characterized the Bahamian lifestyle as hectic, a real go-go-go pace. She described straight 9-to-5 workdays, very much resembling the hustle and bustle you might find in major international cities.
Interesting. So, not the laid-back island vibe some might imagine.
Apparently not, at least not in the main centers like Nassau during the work week. It speaks to the demands of that service-based economy centered around tourism and finance, which often operate on tight schedules and high expectations for efficiency.
You know, it makes me wonder, for someone like Adalgisa coming from what she describes as a slower pace in the DR, how long does it take to truly adapt to that kind of daily grind? Is it something you ever fully get used to, or do you always carry a piece of that calmer rhythm with you? Because she then compared this Bahamian pace to what she observes back in the Dominican Republic, describing its pace as a bit more closed and a bit slow.
Yeah, that's a great question. It points to the kind of cultural adjustment and resilience required for such a move.
So while the tropical climate might be similar, the daily grind, the speed of life, feels very different. It paints a picture of a Bahamian nation that's constantly bustling and on the move, at least professionally.
That seems to be the picture, yeah. And moving from the pace of life to governmental structures, there's another key distinction that shapes the political landscape and how citizens interact with the state.
Okay, what's the setup there?
The Bahamas operates under a parliamentary government, much like the UK or Canada. This means they have a prime minister as the head of government, and their senators are selected or appointed rather than directly elected by the people in the same way as, say, the House of Assembly members.
Ah, okay. So different from a presidential system like the U.S. or
the Dominican Republic, exactly. The DR has a presidential system where the president is directly elected by popular vote, and there's strong emphasis on direct democratic representation in all branches of government.
And here's a genuinely surprising detail Adalgisa shared about the Bahamian system, something that really struck me.
What was that?
She noted how incredibly easy it seems to be to reach the persons that are running the country in the Bahamas, like really accessible. She mentioned being able to casually go up and talk to the prime minister at events, almost as if it were a local community gathering.
Wow, really? That's not what you'd expect generally.
Right. It immediately raises an important question about the nature of a smaller political community versus a larger one. In a smaller country, like the Bahamas with its relatively tiny population, perhaps there could be a much closer, more informal connection between the citizens and their leaders.
That makes sense. It could foster a different kind of political culture, maybe a unique level of accessibility that's almost unimaginable in larger nations. This proximity to power creates a very different dynamic between the governed and the governing, doesn't it?
It really seems like it would. A fascinating aspect of small nation politics.
This level of direct access is certainly a unique and striking aspect, maybe fostering a sense of community and perhaps even accountability in a different way. Now, let's talk holidays, because the Bahamian calendar has some truly unique traditions, some joyful and some evolving.
Okay, holidays are always interesting culturally.
A prime example is Christmas. They celebrate Christmas Day on December 25th, naturally, but then immediately follow it with Boxing Day on December 26th.
Boxing Day, like in the UK.
Exactly. For many of us, the 26th is just, back to work or recovering from Christmas. But in the Bahamas, it's an official public holiday. This is unlike the Dominican Republic's single 24th, 25th celebration, where the main focus is often on Christmas Eve, Noche Buena.
2 full days of official holidays right after Christmas. I think many of us could get on board with that.
I wouldn't mind it, but it's not just Christmas. Adalgisa introduced us to Majority Rule Day on January 10th. This is a relatively new holiday, she said, less than 5 years old at the time of the interview, but profoundly significant.
What does it commemorate?
It commemorates the moment the black majority of population gained the right to vote and finally took control of the government, marking a pivotal turning point in their nation's history away from minority rule. This links directly to their history of slavery and colonialism, celebrating a hard-won victory and a crucial step towards true self-determination.
Wow. That's a powerful acknowledgement of their past and a celebration of progress.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that struggle for a more equitable society. They also observe Emancipation Day on August 1st, specifically commemorating the freeing of slaves, and Labor Day on the first Friday in June.
Standard holidays in many places, but always important.
Right. But what's particularly interesting is the evolution of another holiday, Discovery Day. This used to be celebrated on October 12th, traditionally marking Christopher Columbus's arrival in the New World specifically. San Salvador Island in the Bahamas is often cited as his first landfall.
Okay, Columbus Day, essentially.
Sort of. But Adalgisa explained it has actually transformed into Disco Hero Days, that's DISCO, due to significant public complaints about celebrating a Discovery Day related to Columbus, given the devastating historical context for indigenous populations.
Wow, they actually changed the name and focus. That's significant.
It really is. It's a powerful and very telling shift in national perspective, illustrating how a country can reevaluate and reclaim its historical narrative based on, well, public sentiment and historical understanding. It contrasts sharply with the Dominican Republic, which observes Dia de la Raza, or Race Day, on October 12th, a more broadly accepted, though still sometimes debated, commemoration of cultural mixing resulting from the encounter.
That's a really profound reevaluation of history, isn't it?
Yeah.
It shows how a country can consciously choose to redefine its heritage and what it chooses to celebrate.
Exactly. It's history in motion. And beyond these official holidays, Adalgisa noted the informal but incredibly popular celebrations of U.S. holidays like Thanksgiving and Halloween in the Bahamas.
Even though they aren't official days off.
Right. People still get into the spirit, have Thanksgiving dinners, kids trick-or-treat. This really highlights the strong cultural influence from their close geographic neighbor, the U.S., showing how traditions can bleed across borders, blending the local with the global.
So it's a real mix of influences.
Definitely. This blend of traditional Bahamian, historical, and adopted celebrations creates a unique cultural mosaic that adds to the vibrancy of daily life. And speaking of unique expressions, let's talk about their signature cultural phenomenon, Junkanoo.
Oh, Junkanoo. It sounds absolutely incredible from her description. Adalgisa described it as a truly unique festival, occurring late at night and running into the early morning hours, often spanning Boxing Day, December 26th, and New Year's Day, January 1st.
Yeah, the timing is unusual, isn't it? Pre-dawn celebrations.
Totally. With its own distinctive charm, vibrant, massive costumes, and this infectious rhythmic music driven by goatskin drums, cowbells, and horns, it sounds like an exhilarating, energetic spectacle, a riot of color and sound lighting up the streets.
It does sound amazing. But here's where it gets really interesting about Junkanoo, and it highlights another aspect of the Bahamian economy we touched on earlier, the cost.
Ah, right. What did she say?
Well, while you can certainly walk around Bay Street in Nassau and see the parade from the sidewalks, if you want comfort specifically, a seat in the bleachers for a good view, you have to pay for it.
You have to buy tickets for a street parade.
Essentially, yes, for the prime viewing spots. Adalgisa explained this is due to the very high cost of putting on the parade itself. Think about the elaborate handmade costumes, the intricate floats, the large music groups. It all requires significant funding. And she also mentioned there were past security concerns that maybe necessitated more controlled viewing areas.
Okay, that makes sense.
All right.
How does that compare to, say, Carnival in the Dominican Republic?
It's a stark contrast. Adalgisa pointed out that for Carnival in the DR, access to parades and street festivities is typically free and open to everyone. It creates a different kind of public participation, maybe more spontaneous and less structured. The cost factor in Junkanoo makes it a more curated experience, at least for those seeking prime viewing spots. It's still a massive public event, but with this added commercial layer for comfort.
That's such a practical difference, isn't it? It truly highlights the economic realities behind cultural celebrations. You can still experience the raw energy, but for a premium, more comfortable experience, you pay. Now, beyond the big festivals, what's a typical Bahamian weekend like, according to Adalgisa?
She outlined a very distinct rhythm. It often includes church visits because, as she underscored, it's a very religious country. Faith plays a central role in community life for many Bahamians.
Okay, church is a big part of the weekend. What else?
Along with church, people often enjoy beach outings, which is no surprise given the stunning Bahamian coastline, right? And gatherings in open places. These sound like informal get-togethers, maybe parks or public spaces where people bring coolers filled with drinks and food, just enjoying the outdoors together.
Like picnics or barbecues, kind of?
Sort of, yeah. She mentioned they feature traditional local foods like fritters, often conch fritters, which are a Bahamian delicacy, and unique local drinks. It sounds like a very communal way of spending time, embracing the beautiful natural environment.
Sounds lovely. And she mentioned something about dress code.
Yes, she noted a distinct British influence still visible in their dress culture, especially for church. Apparently, ladies still often dress up quite formally, with some adhering to the tradition of wearing big hats.
Oh, like proper Sunday best.
Exactly, a charming and elegant touch that speaks to their colonial heritage and perhaps a certain level of formality that persists.
Interesting. What about getting around? How do people navigate the islands?
This is another interesting point. Adalgisa noted that, unlike the Dominican Republic, where people might walk around neighborhoods or rely heavily on public transport like guaguas or the metro in Santo Domingo, driving is almost essential in the Bahamas.
Really? Why that?
Primarily due to the distances between places, especially outside the very center of Nassau. She suggested it's not really a walking culture in the same way, emphasizing a more spread-out urban and suburban landscape compared to the denser cities in the DR.
So you pretty much need a car.
It seems that way, yeah. It reinforces the idea of a less dense, more spread-out environment, influenced perhaps by American-style development. It definitely shapes how people move and interact with their surroundings, making personal vehicle ownership almost a necessity.
Absolutely. Okay, now let's pivot to the Bahamas. Up close, its breathtaking natural wonders, the surprising paradox of travel, both in and out of the country, and some everyday challenges the population faces. Adalgisa shared some truly incredible facts about the country's natural beauty that might just blow your mind.
Yeah, this part was amazing. For instance, the Bahamas boast one of the world's largest sea bays and extensive coral reefs. She compared them in size and significance to Australia's Great Barrier Reef.
That's huge.
It really is. And get this, she even mentioned that when astronauts went to the moon, they famously said the most beautiful place they observed from space was the Bahamian Sea, with its incredible, almost unbelievable shades of blue and turquoise.
No. That's an image that really sticks with you, doesn't it? To
Yeah.
be singled out from space like that.
It's an absolutely powerful image, yeah. It truly showcases the unparalleled natural heritage of the Bahamas. However, Adalgisa also acknowledged the current challenges faced by this delicate ecosystem, which is important to note.
Like what?
The coral is unfortunately leaching and experiencing significant damage, the process we know as coral bleaching. She suggested it's potentially linked to increasing ocean temperatures, a global warming impact, and possibly exacerbated by the rising volume of cruise ship traffic in their waters.
Ah, the environmental cost. That raises an important question for all of us, doesn't it? About balancing tourism development with urgent environmental preservation.
It's a critical balance, especially for island nations so dependent on their natural beauty. The country also features unique geological formations known as blue holes, these incredible underwater cave systems that are often teeming with unique marine life.
Sounds amazing for diving.
Definitely. And reinforcing their commitment to conservation, the Bahamas has an abundance of national parks, she said, over 20, including a very large one down in Inagua dedicated to preserving native vegetation and species like the Bahamian parrot. This dedication to conservation is vital, especially with the challenges posed by rapid civilization and habitat loss due to development.
It's a fragile beauty, isn't it? That tension between development and preservation is everywhere. But let's talk about travel, because there's a fascinating paradox here that Adalgisa illuminated.
Oh yeah, this was really interesting.
For Bahamian passport holders, international travel, particularly to the United States, is incredibly easy. Surprisingly easy, maybe.
How so?
They benefit from pre-clearance facilities right in Nassau. This means they clear U.S. customs and immigration before even boarding their flight. So when they land in the U.S., They arrive essentially as domestic passengers.
Oh, wow. That saves a ton of hassle.
Huge convenience. Plus, they don't even require a visa for short visits to the U.S., which makes sense given the proximity and relationship and makes the Bahamas a primary U.S. tourist destination, of course. She also mentioned direct flights to Europe, like London, and underscored the remarkably stable political system, all contributing to convenient international travel out of the Bahamas.
Okay, so getting out is easy. What's the paradox?
What's fascinating here is the sharp contrast with internal travel. Adalgisa highlighted the surprising difficulty and particularly the expense of inter-island travel within the Bahamas itself.
Difficulty traveling between islands. That seems counterintuitive.
Right. She mentioned that plane tickets between islands, even for relatively short hawks, can often be more costly than a flight from Nassau to Orlando, Florida.
Get out. More expensive than flying to Florida.
That's what she said. Apparently, this is partly due to the lack of a fully developed, integrated ferry system for broader internal travel that could connect the numerous inhabited islands efficiently and affordably for residents.
So flying is often the only practical option.
It seems that way, yeah. Flying is often the only quick or practical option for inter-island movement, making local exploration incredibly expensive, especially for residents, not just tourists.
And she added that once you get to another island, the cost of local tourism, accommodation, food, activities is also incredibly high, often priced primarily for international tourists with deeper pockets.
So it's genuinely cheaper and easier for a Bahamian in Nassau to pop over to Florida for a weekend than to explore, say, Eleuthera or Exuma. That's truly wild.
It is wild, and it's a stark illustration of where the economic focus lies, isn't it? It really underscores the nation's reliance on international tourism rather than necessarily fostering robust, affordable domestic exploration for its own citizens.
And this leads to another challenge she mentioned, one that's quite poignant. Locals struggling to access their own beautiful beaches.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, despite laws that are supposed to ensure native Bahamian access to coastal areas, she explained that wealthy individuals, often foreigners, buying up vast stretches of coastal properties can make it very difficult for ordinary Bahamians to freely enjoy their own stunning beaches. Access points get restricted or blocked.
Wow, that must be incredibly frustrating.
It must be. And it raises an important question for any nation heavily reliant on its natural beauty for tourism. How do you ensure your own citizens can also fully enjoy and access those resources? It's a complex issue of equity and access, balancing development with local well-being.
It's a direct consequence, perhaps, of that intense development around tourist areas and maybe the high cost of coastal property pushing locals away from prime locations. A tough situation. And finally, on the demographic front, Adalgisa briefly mentioned the growing presence of immigrants from various Latin American countries.
Adding to the cultural mix.
Exactly. She specifically cited Colombians, Mexicans, Cubans, Argentinians, and Venezuelans who are increasingly contributing to the cultural fabric of the islands, bringing their own traditions and languages. And historically, she noted, the Bahamas has also played a complex role as a transit point for Haitians attempting to reach the U.S., adding another layer to the diverse and sometimes complicated population mix.
So a true melting pot of cultures, adding even more richness to the unique Bahamian beat. Now for the final, and I think most universally applicable segment of our deep dive. Adalgisa's gold standard advice for unlocking English. This is where her personal journey really shines through.
Absolutely. And her number one rule. It's simple, but so profoundly impactful. Don't be shy.
That's it. Don't be shy.
That was her primary foundational piece of advice. Overcoming shyness and that paralyzing fear of making mistakes when you speak. She emphasized how this fear can lead to countless missed opportunities for communication. Think about it. If you're too afraid to speak, you miss out on vital, real-world practice. You just stay silent.
You never improve if you don't try.
Exactly. She even noted how body language plays a significant role. Sometimes, she suggested, being expressive with your hands can help bridge the gap when the words aren't quite there yet. Communication is holistic.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Just like Adalgisa said, don't be shy. It's universal advice, isn't it? For anything new you want to learn or experience, whether it's learning a language, trying a new skill, even meeting new people, you have to push past that initial fear, embrace the potential awkwardness.
Totally. And tied closely to this don't be shy philosophy is her next absolutely critical piece of advice, immersion over translation. She was really emphatic about this.
Meaning, stop translating word for word in your head.
Precisely. She stressed, you need to get out of that translation habit. You need to merge yourself there, immerse yourself. Adalgisa explained the vital importance of understanding words in context, rather than relying on direct word-for-word translation from your native language, which often fails miserably to capture the nuances of English.
Can you give an example she used?
Yeah, she gave the excellent example of advice versus advise. Advice, A-D-V-I-C-E, is the noun, the guidance itself. Advise, A-D-V-I-S-E, is the verb, the action of giving guidance. If you're constantly just translating, you might mix these up or miss these subtle but really important distinctions that native speakers understand instinctively from context. Direct translation often misses the idiomatic richness of the language.
That makes perfect sense. You have to learn how the language works, not just what individual words mean.
Exactly. And it all comes back to practice, practice, practice. Adalgisa reinforced that confidence in English comes with insistent, deliberate practice. You build fluency through using the language.
She had a great analogy for it, didn't she?
She did. She likened language learning to walk. It's a gradual process full of stumbles and small victories. You don't just wake up one morning speaking perfectly. You take small steps, you fall sometimes, you get back up, and you keep moving forward. It's a journey, not a destination you arrive at overnight.
I love that analogy. It takes the pressure off needing to be perfect immediately.
It really does. And building on that, she offered some truly practical strategies for the learner who inevitably feels frustrated or overwhelmed, because we all do at some point.
What kind of strategies?
Her advice is simple but effective. Pause, take a breath, and try to identify the specific difficulties you're encountering. Is it a particular grammar point, certain vocabulary? Understanding fast speech. Then tackle them one by one. This breaks down the huge, overwhelming task of learning English into smaller, manageable, actionable steps. It makes the whole process feel less daunting.
Bite-sized chunks. Smart.
Very smart. And for those who maybe need a real push into immersion, she suggested a brilliant, if sometimes uncomfortable, strategy.
Which is?
Go to places where you're actively forced to speak English, even if it feels intimidating at first. This means consciously choosing environments where you can't easily revert to your native language.
Oh.
For example, she suggested avoiding places with too many Spanish speakers if your goal is to practice English intensively. It's about creating a linguistic necessity for yourself.
Putting yourself in the deep end, essentially.
Kind of, yeah. But in a supportive way. And she also charmingly noted that being around children can really help.
Why children?
Well, perhaps because their language is often simpler, their interactions might feel less intimidating, and crucially, they're often very patient and encouraging. They don't usually judge your mistakes.
That's true. They're often just happy someone is talking to them.
Exactly. Children can be surprisingly great, non-judgmental language partners. Another powerful strategy she detailed is harnessing the power of media movies, TV shows, YouTube.
How should learners use media?
She highly recommended starting by watching movies or YouTube videos with English subtitles initially. This helps connect the sounds you hear with the written words. Then progressively try watching the same content again, but without the subtitles. This really trains your ear, helping you build crucial auditory comprehension skills. It's a fantastic way to develop your listening and naturally pick up pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation.
That's great practical advice. Use content you enjoy anyway. This all boils down to a fundamental and crucial principle for any skill, but especially language. The use it or lose it principle.
Absolutely. And Adalgisa shared a compelling personal anecdote that truly drives this home. It was about her French.
Oh, right. Tell us about that.
She mentioned that she used to be very advanced in French, having learned it to a high level of proficiency at some point in her life. But because she didn't have opportunities to speak it regularly for a long period, she candidly admitted she lost much of that fluency and confidence over time.
So even advanced skills can fade.
Completely. She stressed very clearly, if you don't use it, you lose it. It's a powerful reminder that language is like a muscle. It needs constant engagement and exercise to stay strong and thrive.
It really underscores that learning a language isn't just about cramming vocabulary or studying grammar rules in a book, is it?
Not at all. It's about daily interaction, active engagement, and consistently finding ways to practice, regardless of where you are or what your daily life looks like. Integrate it into your life. And if we connect this back to the bigger picture of our deep dive today, Adalgisa's advice resonates so deeply with the cultural exploration aspect.
How so?
Well, she implicitly shows us that to truly know somebody's culture, to genuinely connect with people from a different background, you really need to try and speak the language. Language isn't just a tool for exchanging information. It's the key to unlocking deeper cultural understanding, fostering empathy, and building meaningful connections that transcend borders. It's the ultimate bridge between people.
Beautifully put. And finally, her inspiring message about embracing imperfection and just keeping going. This honestly feels applicable to so many aspects of life, not just language learning.
It really is. She briefly touched on the difference between American and European English, noting that American English, in her observation, seems more globally prevalent, likely due to media influence from the U.S.
Which is probably true for many learners.
Probably. But her ultimate empowering message is crystal clear. Do not be shy, and crucially, laugh at your errors and just keep going.
I love that laugh at your errors.
Yeah, as she put it so brilliantly and pragmatically, nobody died from me speaking one word. And that's the spirit we should all try to adopt, right? Just try, make a sound, attempt a sentence, make that connection, the fluency, the perfection that will follow eventually. But the first step is just opening your mouth.
What an empowering and liberating message. It completely removes the pressure of perfection and emphasizes the genuine human journey of communication and connection.
Absolutely. Adalgisa's unique perspective, bridging these two distinct and vibrant cultures, the DR and the Bahamas, and personally navigating the real challenges of language acquisition, has given us an incredible window, a window into both the rich, often surprising daily life of the Bahamas and into the universal, actionable truths of learning English effectively. Her story is really a testament to resilience and the power of just putting yourself out there.
It really has been a truly fascinating deep dive, hasn't it? We've explored the vivid cultural contrasts and surprising connections. I mean, from the breakfast staple of grits, which was new to me,
Yeah, me too.
to the unique paying spectacle of Junkanoo. From understanding how parliamentary politics can feel up close in a small nation, to grappling with that truly staggering high cost of island living.
The cost of living part was really eye-opening.
Definitely. And woven throughout all of that, we've gained these invaluable, actionable English learning tips, all centered around that powerful idea of cultural immersion and, maybe most importantly, the incredible power of embracing your mistakes. It's about more than just words, it's about connection.
Which leads us to a final thought, perhaps. This raises an important question for you, our listener, to maybe ponder as you go about your day. How might your own journey, whether it's learning a new language or maybe engaging with any different culture or even trying any new skill, how might that journey be transformed if you truly adopted Adalgisa's "don't be shy, just go for it" philosophy?
Yeah, what would change?
Imagine the doors that could open, the connections you could make, the personal growth you could experience. If you simply started speaking, started interacting, and genuinely learned to laugh at the inevitable errors along the way, rather than letting that fear hold you back, what possibilities would unfold?
That's a powerful thought to end on. Exactly. We encourage you to take that wisdom, that don't be shy energy, and truly apply it. And if you're looking for more ways to continue your English learning journey, to keep that momentum going and build on these amazing insights from Adalgisa's experience,
Where should they go?
well, we highly recommend checking out Rhill English podcast. It actually comes directly from the source of this incredible interview, the English Interview Project, and it's a fantastic resource designed specifically to help you practice, improve, and grow your English skills.
Great recommendation.
Definitely worth checking out. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the Bahamian beat and the art of learning English. We'll see you next time.